Revealed secrets of the Sinister Sleep Experiment, 30 days of terrifying madness and cursed dreams. Sara huddled in the dim light of their living room, the shadows stretching like dark fingers across the worn carpet. The news blared from the TV, each word pummeling her chest: missing children, failed dreams, the sinister whispers of a memory that lingered in Maplewood like an ominous fog. With her breath catching in her throat, she wondered if she had unknowingly signed Jake up for a dark experiment, a descent into a nightmare masquerading as research. Every night, as darkness cloaked their suburban street, Sara could hear Jake thrashing in his sleep. His screams pierced the silence, filling their once peaceful home with dread. It had started with excitement joining the prestigious sleep study that promised relief for his nighttime terrors. But now it felt like a doorway to something sinister. She could almost see it, shadows creeping beyond the edges of her vision, lurking outside their windows, waiting. What had she signed her son up for? Jake stumbled into the kitchen one morning, eyes like saucers, pale and taut. "Mom, it was real!" The shadow man was there again. Panic flashed through Sara's veins, tightening her grip on the coffee pot like it was a lifeline. How could she brush this off? Surrounded by countless empty storefronts and much darker alleys, Maplewood was starting to feel more than just economic decay. There was something viral, something evil spreading through the cracks in their neighborhood. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jake shared his tales that day of shadowy figures drifting in and out of his dreams, eyes watching him, the unease in Sara took root, burrowing deep into her soul. Those stories sounded too real, too vivid to be mere nightmares. There were accounts pulsing with life, recounting horrors that seemed to seep from the edges of a world just slightly out of reach. When she met other parents at the community center, they shared the same gaunt expressions. The malevolence of the sleep study cast a pall over their nights. One mother's eyes glimmered with tears. "I lost him," she whispered. "He thinks the shadows are his friends now." Each tale hung thick in the air, choking and oppressive. The phrase urban myth danced dangerously close to disbelief whenever she tried to unearth the truths about the study. As night fell, shadows slipped through their yard under the relentless moonlight. The walls of their home grew insistent, whispering of risk. Then one night, terror erupted, a howl from Jake so primal it echoed through the very bones of Maplewood, awakening Sara into a twilight forest of fear. What if he became one of the vanished? She felt the lines between her world and nightmares blur, reality twisting into something grotesque. Racers through empty streets, hearts racing, she knocked on door after door, desperation leading her deeper into the rabbit hole, haunted by the chilling question: who would save Jake from the shadows creeping ever closer? In the broken glances from neighbors, she sensed it. The very protection she sought might twist into the greatest threat they'd ever faced. As dawn broke over Maplewood, the light did little to dispel the shadows in Sara's heart. The sun spilled red across the sky, casting an eerie glow on her driveway. The birds remained silent, as if even they sensed the dread creeping into their once vibrant neighborhood. Jake had not slept a wink, his wide eyes darting around the room, unseeing yet painfully aware. He trembled, drawing the blanket tighter around himself, but it offered no comfort. "They're coming, Mom," he whispered, voice a fragile thread hanging in the humid air. Fingers trembling, Sara reached for her phone, desperately scrolling through the internet in search of answers. Each new article about the sleep study sent cold shivers down her spine. Complaints flooded forums. Parents shared stories of their children waking up screaming, muttering about the watchers. One post caught her attention. A mother had claimed that shadows began to materialize in her home, shapes that watched and whispered. "Why did I think this was a good idea?" she muttered, pressing her palm to her forehead. She felt like a moth drawn to a flame, attracted to the seductive promise of research without realizing the danger that lay within. Just then, a chill swept through the room, freezing the air. Jake gasped, turning to her with eyes so wide that they seemed to occupy his entire face. Mom, I saw him, the shadow man. He told me to follow him last night. He said he can show me the way. Sara gritted her teeth. No, Jake. Whatever it is, you mustn't follow it. It's not real. Panic flooded her veins, and she shook with fear for what her son had just revealed. The bed creaked as Jake slid off and stood, a thin, trembling figure on the wooden floor. I'm not scared, Mom. He looks at me like I'm special. In that moment, her heart raced. What did he mean by special? Was that the allure? Was it tempting children to cross that line into darkness, promising power they didn't understand? The room seemed to constrict, shadows swirling closer, wrapping them in an intangible chill. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the front door, causing both of them to jump. Sara moved cautiously, a hammering heartbeat echoing in her ears, and peered through the peephole. 3 neighborhood kids stood outside, faces unusually pale, eyes like dark pools. We need to talk, one whispered, looking over his shoulder. It's happening again. Let them in, Mom, Jake said, a glint of curiosity briefly overpowering his fear. Against her better judgment, Sara opened the door, and instantly felt the cold sweep past her. The kids rushed in, looking from her to Jake, their expressions a mesh of worry and terror. A kid from the study went missing last night, the girl with frizzy hair blurted out, barely able to breathe. The shadows took him. We saw it. As they huddled on the couch, the air thickened with unease. The story spiraled into shared whispers, a web of shared fear. With each word, Sara felt the walls closing in, her heartbeat echoing like a countdown. She needed to know what these children had seen. But as stories filled the room, realization seeped in. Too many of them were already entangled in the dark tapestry woven by the experiment. Mom, Jake said, clutching her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. What if the shadows go after the ones who didn't go missing yet? Her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of all the invisible eyes pressing in on them, hungry and expectant. Drawing closer together, they exchanged raw, frightened looks because in that moment, they understood. They weren't just handling fears anymore, they were wrestling with a looming reality. The door creaked as something bumped against it from the outside. Sara's stomach plummeted. A dark shape shifted beyond the glass pane, sinister and insistent. It's back, she murmured. Somewhere beyond that door, the shadows were waiting, as if coaxing them to cross the threshold. But what exactly awaited them on the other side? The children's whispers faded, and a heavy silence settled in the room. Every heartbeat thudded like a war drum, demanding action but stalling under the weight of fear. The door rattled again, relentless, as the darkness outside seemed almost sentient, pawing, pushing, desperate to get in. Mom, let us hide. Jake's voice trembled, urgency rushing through him. No! Sara hissed, her adrenaline surging. We can't leave. We need to see what it wants. Her heart pounded in her chest, quick and sharp. The shadows outside rippled. She felt their presence, not just lurking but yearning to invade the sanctity of their home. One of the children, a boy with dark, unblinking eyes, stepped closer. We have to do something before it gets in, he said, his voice barely a whisper, haunted. A sudden loud thump echoed again, rattling the window. Instinctively, Sara moved toward the door, curiosity and fear gnawing at her. What do you mean by it? She asked, her throat dry. The watchers, the girl with frizzy hair chimed in, dread seeping into her tone. They take kids, Mom. They take the ones with light. Light? Sara repeated, but before any of them could answer, a frantic series of knocks thundered against the door. Panic swelled inside her as they all exchanged looks. Jake, stay close to me, Sara ordered. She opened the door just a crack, peering out. The shadow stood silhouetted against the morning light, a distortion of reality that made her breath hitch. It was taller than any adult, features obscured as if they were melting into the dark around it. She staggered backward as it leaned closer, whispering something unintelligible. See? One of the kids exclaimed. It's here. We have to go. No. Sara shouted, shutting the door a bit harder than intended. We need answers. Yet her resolve faltered. The air was thick with an inky dread, like it held a collective breath, waiting for something to snap. Suddenly, a loud crack filled the room as the door shuddered under immense pressure, forceful like something had thrown itself against it. The children screamed, and chaos erupted. Sara felt a surge of adrenaline push her forward, chasing this tunnel vision of control. We have to barricade the door. They rushed to the furniture, panic-stricken but determined. As they pushed the heavy couch against the wooden barrier, Sara glanced at Jake, whose face twisted in fear. Mom, it's coming in! He gasped, pointing. At the edge of their vision, a tendril of darkness slipped through the doorframe, an extension of the shadows penetrating their sanctuary. Oh God, Sara breathed, heart racing as she grasped her son tightly. Hold on, just hold on. One of the neighborhood kids cried, what if it knows we're here? What do we do? Shh! Sara snapped, a nervous edge lacing her tone. We need to think, we need light. She darted to the living room, searching for something, a lantern or a flashlight, anything to fend off the encroaching danger. The temperature in the room plummeted. She could see her breath in the air, frost creeping into every corner. Shivers crawled up her spine, but she fought against the chill. Light. Where is the light? Her thoughts raced as she navigated through panic and despair. With every second ticking by, she felt the darkness pushing in, eager to claim them. Then, a low, reverberating voice interrupted her thoughts. You cannot hide from what you are, it whispered, the sound wrapping around her. Was it coming from the shadow outside? Or from the darkness growing within the house? Sara turned, dread pooling in her stomach. What does that mean? A flicker of shadow coalesced, and she heard Jake's small, muffled sob. Mom, it knows me. The walls around them vibrated with the swell of looming truths. In that moment, realization dawned. Were they truly prey, or was something deeper connecting them to this horror? And what if Jake was meant to lead, not just follow? As the doors creaked and the shadows writhed, one terrifying question floated in the charged air. Who was really watching whom? The shadows rustled, shifting like a living entity, plotting something sinister. And slowly, that darkness began to seep in, ready to unravel the very fabric of their sanity. The tremors of fear gripped Sara as she turned back to the children, their eyes wide pools of panic, reflecting the shadows creeping closer. The air grew denser, almost viscous, sealing them in a suffocating cocoon of dread. A sense of urgency clawed at her. She needed to act, but the weight of uncertainty made her limbs heavy. Help me look for the flashlight, she yelled, desperation breaking through her fear. The kids rallied, scattered across the dimly lit living room, rummaging through drawers and under pillows. Time seemed to fold into itself. Every second stretched, every breath felt like a gasp against suffocating darkness. The pounding at the door intensified, rhythmic and primal, a heartbeat in sync with the shadows that slithered just out of sight. Mom, look! Shouted a girl as she pointed. Sara turned to see one of the toys Jake had discarded earlier glowing faintly, a soft blue light flickering like a beacon against the encroaching darkness. It bathed their terrified faces in an otherworldly glow, casting long shadows that danced madly on the walls. Grab it! Sara urged, inching closer to the wayward light. It felt like hope amidst despair, a spark that could keep the shadows at bay. Just as the girl reached for it, the voice outside echoed again, this time louder, a harrowing cacophony that rattled the windows. You cannot hide from your light. You are not safe. Get away from the door! Sara yelled, pulling Jake towards her, instinctively shielding him. The children huddled close, losing themselves in the panic. The door shuddered once more, but this time, something else followed, a deep, guttural snarl. It was like nails scraping against metal, something feral and hungry that sent icy tendrils of terror racing down Sara's spine. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow slipped in through the gaps, morphing, twisting. It pulsed like a living thing, reaching and grasping, its edges bleeding into the room. She felt a cold hand of fear grip her throat, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. Hold it together! she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Mom, it's going to take me! Jake cried out, eyes wild with terror. No, no, no! She shattered, a raw edge of desperation slicing through her fragile composure. She glanced around for something, anything. The blue light from the toy flickered out, and the darkness surged forward, hungry and insatiable. Find that flash! She started, but it was too late. The door splintered in a violent explosion of wood and shadow. The black mass boiled into the room, curling around everything it touched. In that chaos, a revelation struck Sara like a lightning bolt. The shadows were drawn to something to Jake. Hide! Hide now! She shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. But Jason, the boy with dark eyes, was frozen in place, transfixed. His wide gaze latched onto Jake, a dawning comprehension mingling with horror. He's the one, isn't he? Sara felt the foundation of her very being shake, a realization more disturbing than any demon could offer. This wasn't just about fear. This was deeper, a connection that bound them to whatever terror prowled outside. Run! She screamed again, pushing the children towards the back of the house, but the darkness enveloped them, wrapping its tendrils around them, muffling their screams. And in that moment, just before everything went dark, Jake whispered, Mom, I'm not afraid. The shadows surged in, a tide of chaos pulling her into its depths, and for a fleeting second, Sara thought she could hear the echoes of laughter mingled with whispers. What had she gotten them into? In the heart of despair and terror, a creeping dread grew as realization settled like dust around them. Jake was not only in danger, he was the key to it all. As darkness swallowed their screams, a question lingered, sharp and unyielding. What if Jake's light was what the darkness wanted, but for far more insidious purposes? The silence that followed was thick and oppressive, a weight in the air that wrapped around them like a blanket. Sara felt the chill seep into her bones, freezing her in place. The room was swallowed by an abyss where light dared not venture. She blinked, wanting to see, hoping for reassurance, but all that met her was the tangible dark. Jake! Panic clawed at her throat as she desperately searched for him. Each heartbeat echoed like thunder in her ears. The silence felt wrong, unnatural. Over here! A voice cried. It was Jason's. Relief surged through her as she pushed towards the sound, her heart racing. The shadows pulsed, swirling around their feet, hungry for any sign of weakness. Where's Jake? Sara demanded, brushing past shadows that curled like smoke. But dread pooled in her stomach. The urgency in Jason's voice made her skin prickle. He was right. Jason hesitated, his usually calm demeanor shattered by fear. He was right here. I think the shadows took him. No! Her voice trembled, a mixture of anger and utter despair. We have to find him. Moving deeper into the darkness, the walls felt malleable. They warped and twisted as if the house itself was alive, conspiring against them. Shadows stretched and clawed at her hands. The air turned colder with every step, a creeping frost that chilled her breath. Mom? A small voice whimpered. The girl, Lucy, appeared from within the gloom, clutching her knees. I'm scared. Keep close to me, Sara instructed, fear tightening around her heart like a vice. Stay together. Each child's presence reminded her of what was at stake, but their fear was palpable. They were young, caught in a nightmare beyond comprehension. The door loomed behind them, unfamiliar in its splintered form. Where had the safety of their home gone? I can feel him, Jason whispered, staring into the void, his eyes wide. The shadows, they're whispering to me. They want him. What do they want? Sara asked, trembling. The shadows churned violently, their whispers rising in a chilling crescendo. The air vibrated with voices, a chaotic symphony of fear that pierced through to her core. Jake! She screamed again, voice cracking. The walls seemed to pulse in response, alive with shadows eager to swallow their cries. There was something pulsing at the very heart of the darkness, something that resonated with Jake's very essence. Suddenly, a small flicker lit the room, a spark emerging from the gloom. Sara grasped it desperately, a shimmer of light, a leftover memory from the children's laughter. Follow the light, she cried, holding it high. The children clustered around her, the faint glow sweeping away some shadows, revealing paths that twisted like veins. But as she took a step forward, the light dimmed dangerously. The walls moaned, and a deep laughter rang through the air. You think you can escape? The mocking voice reverberated, echoing their worst fears. No! This is our home, she shouted, fighting back tears, choking on the horror creeping in. The shadows recoiled momentarily, but quickly surged forward, renewed. The glow flickered once more, and in that instant, she caught a gleam of silky hair disappearing into the dark. Jake! Mom! Help me! His cry trembled through the abyss. It was a call of pure desperation, and it sent shivers down Sara's spine. What if he's not alone? Jason whispered, terror painted across his face. What if the shadows are using him? No! Sara clenched her fists, determination igniting a flicker of hope. They had to act, had to risk everything. She dashed toward the echoes of her son, urging the others forward, heart pounding as shadows clawed at them, desperate to pull them asunder. We're coming, Jake! But with each stride, an unshakable doubt clawed at her mind. What would they find when they reached him? And beyond that, was this only the beginning of a far darker nightmare awaiting them? The shadows twisted, coming alive with malicious intent, filling the air with chilling whispers. Come to the dark where the real stories begin. Sara plunged forward, the flickering light guiding them through the writhing darkness. The cries of Jake echoed in her ears, each plea tearing at her heart like jagged glass. The depth of the darkness felt almost sentient, watching, waiting, ready to consume them all. Stay close. Don't let go of each other, she urged, not wanting to think of the shadows lurking at the fringes. Lucy clutched Jason's arm. The shivers running through her tiny frame made her seem more fragile, more breakable, and Sara felt that same vulnerability weighing on her own shoulders. As they moved, the light pulsed irregularly, each beat synchronized with the frantic rhythm of her heart. Every flicker sent shadows recoiling for a moment, but then they surged back, emboldened by the children's fear. Whispers rose again, curling around them with ghostly tentacles, each murmur laced with promises and threats that sent cold shivers racing down Sara's spine. You're only delaying the inevitable, they hissed, their voices overlapping, painting a nightmarish tapestry of despair. Jake! She called again, fighting to keep her voice steady, though it faltered. Hang on! We're coming! From up ahead, a low rumble vibrated through the walls, as if the house was shuddering under the weight of the intruders. It felt like the world itself was mocking their desperate quest for light, for hope. Jason's eyes went wide. Look! He pointed ahead, where the light seemed to gather in a tiny pool, illuminating a space that had previously been swallowed by shadows. The outline of a figure stood at the center, faint, but unmistakably familiar. Sara's heart soared at the sight of her son's tousled hair, just visible against the dark. Jake! She breathed, the name escaping her lips like a prayer. But the shadows surged, slamming into her like a wave, trying to suffocate their hope. Mom! Jake's voice was frantic, coated in fear. Help me! They won't let me go. The desperation in his words twisted inside her like a dagger. Hold on, buddy! We're almost there. Was it faith or madness that inspired her now? She wasn't sure, but the fear radiating from her children spurred her on. Suddenly, the pool of light expanded, revealing a door within the shadows, a warped, splintered thing that begged to be opened but radiated a sinister pull. The laughter returned, echoing viciously, like mocking applause. Don't you understand? You can't save him. He's ours now, it taunted. Mom? Lucy's voice trembled. Panic inflated in her eyes, matching Sara's racing heart. What if we can't get him back? The shadows clawed at them, their spectral fingers brushing against Sara's legs, dragging at the hem of her pants. The chill they brought was more than physical, it carried a sense of despair that seeped into her very soul. And with every second, the door pulsed darker, more inviting. The shadows chanted, low and sinister, like a dark hymn, open the door, and let the secrets unfold, don't listen to them. Sara shouted, forcing her foot forward. But the shadows were relentless, buffeting her like a storm, whispering dark promises of power and freedom from this nightmare. In that moment, a decision crystallized in her mind. They had to risk everything for Jake, for each other, to defy the darkness that sought to devour them. "Lucy, Jason! Keep your eyes on me!" she shouted, determination fighting back terror. They lunged toward their son, the door creeping open as if drawn by their desperate intent. Light spilled through, illuminating faces contorted in fear, yet filled with the fragile hope of a family reunited. But the shadows weren't finished, swirling in a frenzy now, preparing for one final assault. As the door gaped wide, Sara reached for Jake, her heart roaring in her chest. But what lay beyond could be a sanctuary or a trap, a revelation or a nightmare. In that pivotal moment, as she grasped for her son, the truth unfolded. The shadows weren't just lost spirits. They were something much darker, sentient, aware, whispering secrets of forgotten horrors. "Sara!" Jake cried out, his small hand stretching towards her in the cusp of light. She was so close, but was the door the means of salvation or damnation? And just then, as if the world held its breath, the ground trembled beneath them, shifting in waves of dark energy. The shadows coiled tighter, and the air crackled with menace. What would unfold next awaited just beyond promises of danger and dark truths yet to be revealed. Would they become part of the shadows, or could they escape with their souls intact? Sara's fingers brushed against the doorknob, its surface ice-cold against her skin. She could feel the pulsating energy thrumming through it, resonating with her heartbeat. Behind her, Lucy's breath caught, and Jason's grip on her arm tightened, his knuckles going white. Just a step more, she thought, her resolve steeling against the undulating shadows that sought to pull them back, to suffocate their hope with their overwhelming despair. "Jake!" She screamed again, lunging forward as the door swung open with a creak that sent ripples through the darkness. The world tilted, and for a heart-stopping moment, everything was silent. She zoomed in on her son's terrified face, illuminated by a halo of unreal light. "Mom!" Jake screamed, his small frame wavering in and out of focus as shadowy hands clawed at him from behind, dragging him back into the murk. "Hold on!" Sara's voice cracked, yet it was threaded with palpable desperation. The shadows twisted, a living mass writhing in fury, their whispers turning into a cacophony that drowned out her thoughts. "We're here, we're right here!" She felt the coldness of the air wrapping tighter around them, as if the shadows could sense their determination and wanted to extinguish it at all costs. Lucy whimpered, her eyes wide and shimmering with tears. "Mom, I'm scared!" she cried. "Lucy, listen to me!" Sara shouted, her heart racing faster than ever. She stepped forward, urging her children with wild fervor. "Step into the light. It's our only chance." But as they moved closer, the door began to close slowly, ominously. The shadows seemed alive, reaching for the threshold, bristling like 1,000 angry serpents. "Don't you dare!" Sara screamed, throwing herself against the door, bracing it with sheer will. The air thickened, and the whispers turned mocking, slithering into her ears. "You think you can save him? You're too late then." She felt it, a deep, gnawing fear creeping into her chest. The truths that festered within the shadows clawed at her sanity, threatening to unveil dark secrets she dared not confront. Were they strong enough to withstand the lure of despair? The ground trembled again, shadows surged, crashing against her, a wave of cold dread washing over her body. With every second dragging on, the whispers seemed to entwine into her mind, echoing her worst fears. "You will never leave Mom." "I can't!" Jake cried, his voice cracking, as the sinister hands pulled him farther away. "No!" Sara thundered, feeling the last remnants of her willpower igniting into a furious blaze. She reached out, stretching her fingers toward her son, feeling the overwhelming force of darkness only inches away. Suddenly, Jason shouted, "I see something!" He pointed towards the shadows swirling aggressively behind Jake, where a figure began to take shape, a silhouette that formed and shifted like living smoke. "What? What do you see?" Sara demanded, though terror clutched at her throat. It looks like you, Mom," Jason exclaimed, eyes wide. "No!" she gasped, shaking her head violently as she stepped closer against the door, trying to drown out the onslaught of twisted emotions that threatened to overcome her. "That can't be possible. We need to help Jake." But the shadows moved in closer, wrapping tendrils around her children, their screams melding with the nightmarish laughter that echoed through the chamber, now deafening. The silhouette moved fluidly, drawing nearer to the frail light of the doorway, glaring at Sara with a twisted grin, whispering promises of power if only she would join it. Sara, the figure beckoned, its voice a grotesque mimic of her own. "Come to me. You can have everything you've ever wanted." Release your fears. As temptations festered in her heart, Sara struggled to stay focused. It was too real, too tangible, a siren call that threatened everything she knew. "Don't! Stay away from us!" she yelled, launching herself forward, muscles tense, the riptide of shadows curling around her ankles. Time stretched as the room quaked. As Sara reached, she felt warmth slip from her grasp, the shadows pulling Jake away as the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous finality. The crescendo of terror echoed in her ears as darkness engulfed them. But then, with her last breath of resolve, she shouted one last thing into the abyss: "We will not succumb." In that moment, everything went dark. The echoes of her voice reverberated in the silence, and an intense cold filled the space where hope and light had just shimmered. And then, like a chilling afterthought, came a whisper, soft, sinister, and unmistakably familiar. This is just the beginning. What fate awaited them in the depths of despair? Would they break free from the shadows, or was there something lurking even deeper than they had imagined? Sara's entire body was paralyzed in cold isolation, suspended in a void darker than the depths of night. The absence of sound was deafening, each heartbeat a heavy thud in her ears. The shadows danced around her like vipers poised to strike, the air thick with an oppressive presence that snuffed out any flicker of hope. She strained her eyes, searching for her children in the murk, but it felt like they were being swallowed deeper into the abyss. "Jake! Lucy!" Her voice, a desperate whisper, evaporated in the suffocating blackness. Her skin prickled with dread, the overwhelming sensation of being watched creeping over her like icy fingers. Memories enveloped her, inviting guilt and regret to claw at her sanity. "I should have protected them. I should have seen." Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her attention. Shadows shifted, coalescing into something recognizable. A pale figure materialized amid the darkness. Its features were indistinct but eerily familiar. Hollow eyes stared at her with an unsettling blend of sorrow and malice. The resemblance was uncanny, an echo of herself. "Welcome back, Sara," the figure said, its voice a twisted version of her own, laced with mockery. "Did you think you could escape your truths?" Sara's breath hitched. "Leave my children alone! You have no power here!" she shouted, but her voice trembled. Doubt gnawed at her resolve. "Power? Oh, dear Sara, power lies in acceptance." The figure advanced, weaving through the pitch black like a wisp of smoke. "You've denied your darkness for so long. Embrace it, and your children will be safe. You can save them." "Shut up!" Sara screamed, clenching her fists. "I won't listen to you." "Why not? We are the same." It took yet another step, closer this time, a vile smile spreading across its face. "Isn't it time to finally accept who you really are?" Images began to flood her mind unbidden, each one a forgotten moment wrapped in fiery regret. She saw herself ignoring the signs, the shadows lurking in corners. She remembered walking past clues, lost in her own life, distracted, uninterested, self-absorbed. The haunting faces of her children swam to the surface. Bright smiles extinguished, replaced by screams and despair. "No!" she howled, shaking her head violently as tears streamed down her cheeks. "I want to succumb. I want to become like you." The mockery in the figure's eyes thickened with menace. "Ah, but you already are. You've buried it deep, your fears, your failures. And it festers, waiting to consume you whole. Let it out, Sara. Only then will you have true power." The darkness shifted again, swirling chaotically around her as if debating whether to pull her deep into its embrace. She felt the cold edge of despair scraping against her consciousness. The shadows fed on her fear, becoming denser, drawing ever closer. Her heart raced, pumping adrenaline through her veins, urging her to fight. She thought of Jake, of Lucy too innocent to be engulfed by this darkness. "I will find you. I will save you!" she shouted defiantly, as though hoping her declaration could pierce the thick atmosphere of despair. In response, the shadows howled, a cacophony of despair ringing through the void. The embrace of darkness tightened, wrapping around her limbs like chains. The whispers intensified, contorting into a chorus of her darkest anxieties, shrouded secrets that made her skin crawl. Overwhelmed, Sara stumbled backward, feeling the edges of her reality fraying under the pressure. And just as she thought she would be engulfed, a blinding light erupted around her, cutting through the shadowed gloom. With each pulse of brightness, the darkness shrank back, but the figure only laughed, its voice echoing chillingly. "You think light can save you? There's no escape from what lies within." Suddenly, Sara felt a pulling sensation, a tether to her children, reaching clearer with each breath. "I will not stop. I refuse!" she cried. But the exulting laughter grew louder as the brightness flickered and dimmed, like a dying flame. Just as she felt herself being drawn toward the light, a horrifying realization gripped her: the light might not be salvation after all. And then the laughter stopped, replaced by a chilling silence that swallowed her whole. What awaited her when the light faded? Would her resolve be enough to shield her family from the darkness creeping ever closer? The silence stretched, a heavy shroud that weighed down Sara's mind. She swayed, caught in the tension between the fading light and the ever-encroaching shadows. In that stillness, every heartbeat rang like a warning bell, vibrating through the void. Panic clutched at her throat. The presence, dark, hostile, insatiable, seemed to pulse around her, feeding on her fear. "Jake! Lucy!" she screamed again, voice tinged with desperation. The echo of her call was swallowed by the blackness. It felt like every second dragged on, each heartbeat louder than the last. She felt the darkness close in, a living thing wrapping around her like barbed wire. Then, from the depths of the shadows, came a low murmur, a chilling chant that vibrated in her bones. "Come to us, Sara, join us." It was a chorus of whispers, mixing dread with sinister glee. The figure, her twisted reflection, stood watching, as if waiting for that moment when she would finally crumble. "Get away from me!" she cried, voice breaking. She was losing her grip on reality, every part of her screaming to flee. In a sudden burst of clarity, she recalled the secrets she had buried. The feeling of blame, the decisions that haunted her every night, the moments she'd failed to shield her children from the lurking horrors they faced. Recognition hit her hard, a jolt of formless dread. The realization was dizzying. You can't outrun what you refuse to confront. The ground beneath her began to shift, the familiar turning alien and threatening. It felt as if she teetered on the edge of a precipice, lost in an unfathomable abyss. Just then, the light flickered violently, each pulse a desperate plea, battling against the consuming shadow. Sara battled with her very essence, grappling with the truth, fear battling resilience. She imagined Jake and Lucy, innocent faces distorted with terror, pleading silently for her to save them. "I will not fail you!" she yelled defiantly, clenching her fists until her nails dug into her palms. As her anger surged, the shadows shrieked, a sound like nails scraping against metal, a pained wail that clawed at her insides. In that moment of raw emotion, something inside her shifted. The rage ignited a spark, and it spread like wildfire. With every ounce of determination she could muster, Sara focused hard, channeling her energy into the light. It flared brighter, a beacon against the creeping darkness. But at the same time, the figure mirrored her darkness, mirrored her resolve. "Foolish, naive Sara," it hissed, its voice warped and cruel. "Your light is nothing but a candle against my storm." The shadows thickened, swirling violently as if responding to its call, shadows rushing toward her like a tidal wave. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, her voice cracking but rising above the chaos. "Acceptance," It spat, its features contorting with rage. Admit you are flawed, and your children will be saved. Denial is what keeps you here. The weight of those words sank in. Her children were still lost, and the tether, the connection she felt, was growing weaker. Every second counted. Yet what if it was true? What if her denial, her fear, was their undoing? No! She ground out, a whirlwind of danger and desperation lacing her voice. I'll fight. I refuse to be your puppet. But darkness surged forth, ensnaring her wrists and ankles, tightening its grip. Just as she felt her energy ebbing, the light flared once more, igniting a dazzling explosion of brilliance that forced the shadows back. In that moment of clarity, something shifted within her, a flicker of understanding. Her flaws didn't make her weak, they made her human. It was then that she saw the shimmer of her children at the edge of the light, faces illuminated but distorted, as if they were trapped in a mirror. No! She screamed, feeling their energy siphoned away. In this frantic moment, a decision crystallized. Would she confront her own darkness, or watch her children slip away into the void? The shadow figure reared back, a wicked grin splitting its pallid face. Choose, Sara, choose wisely. The world spun, reality warping dangerously beneath her. She was on the brink, teetering between shadow and light, and the choice ahead loomed darker than ever. In the last flicker of illumination, before the shadows surged once more, an anguished whisper reached her, the haunting voices of Jake and Lucy calling out to her, bringing clarity and fear into focus. Could she truly save them, or would the darkness take over, binding them all in a never-ending nightmare? Help us, Mommy, their faint voices echoed, fading as shadows surged, threatening to engulf them entirely. A thick veil of darkness rose again, ready to consume her, and that fleeting hope. Would that last glimmer of light guide her through, or was this the moment she'd lose everything? Sara's heart raced, each beat echoing in her chest like a war drum. The light from her spirit surged, flickering with power as she grappled with the swirling shadows, the figure's dark voice taunting her. It felt like an unending battle, and yet within her, a flicker of courage sparked, refusing to be extinguished. The darkness writhed, inching closer, but she stood firm. Jake! Lucy! She shouted, channeling every ounce of her strength into that luminous space. I'm coming for you! Her voice shattered the oppressive silence, and for a brief moment, the shadows recoiled, as if they sensed the challenge. A surge of light began to bloom from her core, illuminating the dark tendrils that threatened to wrap around her. I accept my flaws! She cried, the words spilling from her lips like a mantra. But I will not succumb to fear. Each declaration sent ripples of light cascading outward, pushing back the consuming blackness inch by inch. The shadow figure snarled, fury etched across its distorted features. You think acceptance is strength? It howled. You cannot change your essence. But Sara felt something shift within her, a certainty that filled her. Embracing her fears did not give the shadow power, it empowered her. The memories of her children flickered behind her eyelids, joyful faces, playful laughter. She thought of the nights spent unsure, afraid to dive into the depths of her own darkness. No more. This was her moment, a crossroads of light and shadow. Your hold on my children ends now, she declared with fierce conviction, producing another wave of light that rushed outward, illuminating their surroundings. The shadows screeched in agony as the brilliance expanded, revealing misformed creatures writhing within, their fearsome shapes dissipating under the onslaught of her spirit. A glimmer of movement caught her eye, and there, within the radiant embrace of her light, was Jake, his small frame struggling against the encroaching darkness. Mom! Help! He cried, a mix of fear and hope woven into each word. Hold on, buddy! I'm coming! Fueled by love, she surged forward, unlocking the determination coursing through her veins and grasping hold of every flicker of light that pulsed within. Don't let go! Lucy's voice joined the chorus, soft yet strong, a tethering call that clung to Sara's heart. Vigor surged through Sara as she drew closer to her children, banishing the shadows that clawed at her resolve. Together! She shouted, gathering her children into the embrace of her light. Suddenly, the shadow figure recoiled, its form wavering, revealing deep fractures within its facade. "You'll never escape!" it shrieked, but its voice held an edge of desperation now, the shadows wavering as they began to dissolve. "No!" Sara shouted defiantly, clutching her children close. "We are unbreakable!" As they stepped into the light, the figure let out a wretched cry, its power ebbing rapidly against the brilliance surrounding them. The doorway of shadows loomed, dark and gaping, as they stepped through, leaving behind the howling remnants of darkness. As they emerged, the world shuddered with electric energy, the air crackling with the remnants of shadow and light battling a final war. Together, they found themselves in a pale, suffused light, warmth enveloping them like a protective blanket. The chilling call of the shadows faded, and the intensity of their fear began to melt away. They stood on the brink of a shattered boundary, where darkness and light danced together, lingering like a whisper of what had been. "Mom!" Jake clung tightly to her, and Sara's heart surged with love as she knelt down to meet his gaze. There were tears in his eyes, but they brimmed with relief, not fear. "You're safe, Jake," she breathed, wrapping her arms around them both, embracing the moment after the storm. "I was so scared," he confessed, his voice trembling but warm against her shoulder. "I know, sweetheart, but we faced it together. We did it together." She glanced over at Lucy, who appeared dazed but resolutely taking in the light around them. "I thought we were lost," Lucy admitted quietly, her wide eyes shimmering as she took in their surrounding. "Not anymore," Sara reassured, holding her tightly. "We found our light." As the specter of fear began to fade from their hearts, Sara gazed into the distance, seeing the remnants of shadows dissolve back into the ether, leaving echoes of anguish where they had plagued her family. A weight slipped from her shoulders, the burdens of guilt, blame, and fear faded like memories at dawn. In that moment, she knew they were changed forever. They bore the scars of survival, and every shadow faced together would serve as a reminder. "Let us go home," Sara said, smiling with a newfound strength, ready to embrace each day with her children. "I promise to always protect you." And as they stepped forward, light enveloping them like a warm embrace, they walked free from their shadows and fear, embarking on a new chapter where they could reclaim their dreams and find hope anew. This was their moment, a turning point that wouldn't just signify an end, but a beginning bursting with possibilities. The road ahead was luminous, each step a testament of courage and love. And with that promise, the darkness faded into mere memories, forever muted by the light that flourished within them, all thanks to the heart that chose to fight back. Now Sara smiled again, truly free. The shadows had lost. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. This is the moment to show your support. Don't miss the next exclusive stories.